there, my name's Sarah, and in this video I'm going to show you how to draw bird wings and how to apply what you learned to fantasy creatures like griffons. I'm using the program Clip Studio Paint, but of course you can use any drawing program you want, or even good old pencil and paper. It's tempting to draw wings as just a bunch of random feathers, but understanding their anatomy will help you create more realistic artwork. The first thing to understand about bird wings is the skeleton. It's an arm. The bones are actually very similar to humans, with a short upper arm bone called the humerus, two bones called the radius and ulna forming the lower arm, a bunch of carpal bones at the wrist, and a set of metacarpals and phalanges forming the fingers. Knowing the bones of a bird's wing will help you visualize how it folds and extends. It's also key to knowing where the main flight feathers are attached. A bird's flight feathers consist of primaries attached to the hand bones and secondaries attached to the ulna. There are usually 10 primaries, though that can vary, and the number of secondaries varies between different bird species. Each feather has a rigid shaft down the middle with individual hair-like structures called barbs branching off of it. While it depends on the type of bird, the primary feathers usually start out pointed, gradually becoming more rounded toward the body. Depending on species, sometimes the primary feathers have a distinct notched shape. The secondaries are all rounded feathers. From the underside, the feathers overlap like this. And when seen from above, the opposite is true. When a bird's wing is folded, the primaries tuck underneath the secondaries like this. The actual muscle and flesh of a bird's wing aren't that big. Again, it's basically an arm. Most of the muscles that power flight are found in the bird's chest instead. One important feature for an artist to note is the ligament connecting the shoulder to the wrist. Right now, our bird's wing is full of holes. That won't work so well for flying. There's a second row of feathers that cover the gaps, called the greater coverts. They're found on both the upper and lower sides of the wings. Think of them like a smaller version of the main flight feathers. Here's where things start to differ between the top and bottom of the wing. On the top, you'll find one more row of distinct coverts covering the secondary wing feathers and a set of feathers at the thumb called the alula. The rest of the wing is covered with smaller feathers called lesser coverts. The scapular feathers cover the bird's shoulders, and the tertials close the gap between the secondary flight feathers and the bird's body. The underside of the wing is less complex, with lesser coverts covering the remainder of the wing and fluffy feathers in the armpit area called auxiliaries. I know that all seems pretty complex, but the more you practice drawing them, especially when you use references, the more natural it'll become. So how do we put it into practice? Let's add some feathered wings to a fantasy creature I drew, a griffon. I've added a link below where you can download the image if you'd like to follow along. I'll start by sketching in the arms, just like I showed you before. Quick tip. Most art programs have ways you can imitate sketching on paper. In Clip Studio Paint, for example, I like to use the pencil tool. I set my layer color to light blue to differentiate my sketches from my finished line work. Next, I'll add the ligament that connects the shoulder to the wrist. Then I pencil in a guide for the overall shape of the wings. Remember that the primary feathers connect to the hand, and the secondary feathers connect to the lower arm. I'll add another line on each wing as a guide for the greater coverts. Now I'll sketch in each set of feathers. I've dropped the opacity of my guides down to better see what I'm doing. I'll start with the smallest feathers, the lesser coverts, since they overlap all the others. Next are the greater coverts. Since we're on the underside of the wings, the outermost feathers will overlap those further in. Then I'll draw in the flight feathers. Griffons are half eagle, and most birds of prey have notched feathers, so that's how I'll draw this guy. Notice how even the notches follow that same curve as the rest of the wing feathers. Then I'll sketch in the other feathers, the auxiliaries and tertials that fill in the underwings. Remember the thumb feathers, the alula? Sometimes you'll be able to see them raised, as I've drawn here. Finally, I'll add my final line work and a few little details, and turn off the sketches. And there you have it, how to add feathered wings to a griffon. That's it for this one. What else would you like to learn to draw? Be sure to subscribe for more of my drawing videos. Tag me at Ms.RedNebula on Twitter or Instagram if you followed along with the Griffon drawing, or if you'd like to show me your drawings of winged creatures. See you soon! A big thank you to all of my patrons, with a special shout out to Nova Tier patron Joe C. Phipps. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to help support future content like this.